I want to read today the words of Frederick Douglass that he wrote as an appendix to his first autobiography called The Narrative of Life. And he writes, I find since reading over the foregoing narrative that I have in several instances spoke in such a tone and manner respecting religion as may possibly lead those unacquainted with my religious views to suppose me an opponent of all religion. To remove the liability of such misapprehension, I deem it proper to append the following brief explanation. What I have said respecting and against religion, I mean strictly to apply to the slave-holding religion of this land, and with no possible reference to Christianity proper. For between the Christianity of this land and the Christianity of Christ, I recognize the widest possible difference, so wide that to receive the one as good, pure, and holy is of necessity to reject the other as bad, corrupt, and wicked. To be the friend of one is of necessity to be the enemy of the other. I love the pure, peaceable, and impartial Christianity of Christ. I therefore hate the corrupt, slave-holding, woman-whipping, cradle-plundering, partial, and hypocritical Christianity of this land. Indeed, I can see no reason but the most deceitful one for calling the religion of this land Christianity. I look upon it as the climax of all misnomers, the boldest of all frauds, and the grossest of all libels. Never was there a clearer case of stealing the livery of the court of heaven to serve the devil in. I am filled with unutterable loathing when I contemplate the religious pomp and show, together with the horrible inconsistencies which everywhere surround me. We have men stealers for ministers, women whippers for missionaries, and cradle plunderers for church members. The man who wields the blood-clotted cowskin during the week fills the pulpit on Sunday and claims to be a minister of the meek and lowly Jesus. The man who robs me of my earnings at the end of each week meets me as a class leader on Sunday morning to show me the way of life and the path of salvation. He who sells my sister for purposes of prostitution stands forth as the pious advocate of purity. He who proclaims it as a religious duty to read the Bible denies me the right of learning to read the name of God who made me. He who is the religious advocate of marriage robs whole millions of its sacred influence and leaves them to the ravages of the wholesale pollution. The warm defender of the sacredness of the family relation is the same that scatters whole families, sundering husbands and wives, parents and children, sisters and brothers, leaving the hut vacant and the hearth desolate. We see the thief preaching against theft and the adulterer against adultery. We have men sold to build churches, women sold to support the gospel, and babes sold to purchase Bibles for the poor heathen, all for the glory of God and the good of souls. The slave auctioneer's bell and the church-going bell chime in with each other, and the bitter cries of the heartbroken slave are drowned in the religious shouts of his pious master. Revivals of religions and revivals in the slave trade go hand in hand together. The slave prison and the church stand near each other. The clanking of fetters and the rattlings of chains in the prison and the pious psalm and solemn prayer in the church may be heard at the same time. The dealers in the bodies and the souls of men erect their stand in the presence of the pulpit, and they mutually help each other. The dealer gives his blood-stained gold to support the pulpit, and the pulpit in return covers his infernal business with the garb of Christianity. Here we have religion and robbery, the allies of each other, devils dressed in angels' robes, and hell presenting the semblance of paradise. These words were written in 1845, April 28th, 1845 to be exact. And here we are, 172 years later, and those words still ring true about who is in our pulpits today, and the Christianity of this land not matching the Christianity of Christ in any respect whatsoever. Over the last few days, there's been reports about Vice President Pence and his involvement in the whole Trump, Russia gate, whatever. Right now, as I record this, he's meeting with senators, trying to get them to pass this new way of repealing Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And yet this is the same man who says, I'm a Christian first and a politician second, or a Christian first, then a father, then a politician. But I ask him, how is it Christian to rob people of their health care, to really put people to death, which is what you are doing when you are taking away their health care? How in God's name is that at all being Christian, Vice President Pence? We have not come that far. We have not come that far in 172 years. That the face of Christianity today is still the face of Christianity then. My dear friend Janet Edwards, the Reverend Janet Edwards, wrote a piece in the Pittsburgh newspaper this past weekend in which she called herself a progressive Christian. And while I generally agree with many of her stances, just as I reject the term evangelical Christian, I reject the term progressive Christian. We must just be Christian. And the essence of Christianity is change. The essence of Christianity is transformation. And so when you are about change, you cannot be a conservative Christian. The essence of Christianity is love, and love is a radical proposal. And to do what Christ instructed us to do, which is to love each other, is radical. To be a Christian is to be radical. Christ was radical, and that is why he was crucified on the cross, because he was radical. He wanted change. And he was not going to accept how things were just because that's always how they had been. So like Frederick Douglass, I too reject the Christianity of this land. I accept the Christianity of Christ. But I will always speak out against these fraudulent Christians. For they take the name of the Lord my God in vain.